And that's really one of my driving forces when we talk about entrepreneurship, because I really want women to know that I claim my seat here, that I know what it's like to have walked that walk of bankruptcy, of divorce, of alcoholism, of, raising a child on my own.
You're going to hear a powerful story from a woman who has overcome some really hard things. She got sober 19 years ago, got her master's degree at 57, and today she is an entrepreneur. She's become a dear friend of mine. She actually took my course and launched her podcast, She Soars Fearlessly. Grab your headphones and maybe a notebook, because you're going to be so inspired and learn that it's definitely never too late to step forward and soar. Listen in. Welcome to Step Forward with Terri Mullen. If you're new here, welcome. If you have been following along for a while, welcome back, and thank you so much for being here. I'm a mom to 4 adults, a wife of 34 years, a midlife entrepreneur, and your confidence coach who transformed my own doubt into confidence to speak, write my book, start a podcast, and launch my own business. Now I empower other amazing women just like you to do the same. So lean in and learn how to crush that fear, amplify your voice, and build confidence to create your own impact and income. I'm here to encourage you and empower you every step of the way. Let's step forward. I am so excited about my guest today. You're going to meet my friend Pam Joyal, who brings 30 years of senior level public health marketing experience to the entrepreneurial world. In December 2019, Pam completed her master's degree in health communication from Boston University. Woohoo! Always have to give a plug for that because 2 of my boys went there. And she built upon that accomplishment by launching her own communications consulting firm, Satori Communications Group, which she calls SCG. While working in her full-time position as an executive director for a small nonprofit, Pam taught adult mental health first aid, MHFA, as a certified instructor through the National Council of Mental Wellbeing. Pam facilitated and taught as a consultant for universities such as Dartmouth College, the Geisel School of Medicine, and the Tuck School of Business, career training schools, community mental health centers, wellness organizations, and community colleges. In addition, Pam launched Swiss, Successful Women in Sobriety SOAR, as a transformational success coach and leader who advocates for women in recovery to ignite their spirit, inspire personal development, and empower women to thrive on their recovery journey. Pam is a speaker, a coach, and a podcast host of She Soars Fearlessly, and she cultivates enthusiasm and positive energy in everything she does, and you're going to see that as we talk. She and her husband, Mark, have 3 children, 2 grandchildren, and live in whatever Winnipeg, blah, 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 blah. You could correct me on that, Pam, but before we dive in, Pam and I met actually through a course, and along the way, Pam decided she wanted to start a podcast. I teach podcasting, and so she took my course, and she launched She Soars Fearlessly. So without further ado, I am so excited for you to meet my friend, Pam Joyal. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Terri. Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for that nice introduction. I really appreciate you. I truly do. You're just a spark of light in my world, and I love having your friendship.
Well, thank you, and likewise. And just thank you for saying yes. I'm really excited about this conversation because you clearly bring such a wealth of knowledge and experience. I'm excited just to kind of dive in and talk to my audience, which I think we have a similar audience in the age group, just about what it's like to step forward midlife and to start again, to reinvent yourself, especially now because women are stepping forward in this season of life and reinventing themselves, being midlife and being an entrepreneur. I think we're the leading age demographic for entrepreneurship, so it's super exciting. So before we dive in, just kind of share a little bit about your background. With all that you're doing, what kind of motivated you to become a midlife entrepreneur, to start your own business, and what prompted that change to go from working for someone else to starting your own business? Kind of what prompted that?
Sure. Thanks so much. Listen, I live in a beautiful area of New Hampshire called Lake Winnipesaukee.
Woohoo! That's it.
Just wanted to help out there a little bit. Lake Winnipesaukee has many lakes around it as well, but we live in a very beautiful area here, and I grew up here, and I've been very blessed to grow up in New Hampshire. But, As you've mentioned, I've grown up in the public relations world, and I have come from a family of a lot of accomplishment, but also a lot of strife, a lot of issues going on, and one of them being alcoholism in my family from my mother's side and my father's side. But that we can get into later. I think what really prompted me to get into entrepreneurship in my midlife was that I was really tired of accomplishing, and yet not feeling fulfilled and not feeling like I'm really touching my soul purpose. And I've had some really tough bosses. I did public relations for the state of New Hampshire and for the Health and Human Services. I've come up in the ranks. I've worked very hard and I learned so much. But I had really tough bosses, and some things I saw, I wasn't sure it was all, great things. When you really are in the back rooms of some discussions, you really learn more about what's really going on. And but through all of that, I still feel blessed. I've worked for some really tough people, commissioners, and I've worked with legislators and governors and people like that. But I've also worked in, hospice care and mental health, and as my life went forward. And so, entrepreneurship was something. When I thought about this question that you sent me, I thought, well, having my own company has always been a dream of mine, because I think it came from my dad. My dad was a business owner. My dad was the oldest of 5 or 4, I forget. But he came from a very tough background, and he started his own business in asphalt and gravel. And I always remember him being in his office in the home, or being on the telephone, or always being around, or not around because he was traveling, but always just being a business owner from home. And I guess I never really thought about that until I got older, and he worked extremely hard. Matter of fact, I always saw him on the phone. When I saw him on the phone, he started way back when in 1970s with his phone car. They called it a phone car, and it was like his way of reaching people. And that was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And I would work with him periodically and actually go to his plant and weigh in trucks and start to learn a little bit about what he's doing. But I also saw a lot of strife and difficulty. And what I want to share is that it cost him a lot too.
Yeah.
So we have to focus and grow, and it can be very messy in entrepreneurship. And I think what I decided last year, and October 31st, was to take a deep dive inside instead of continue to perform on the outside, and find out really who I am and what is it I'm all about, and how do I want to finish this play of life, as the main actor. And learning from people like you and people that I got involved with, I learned that, my past doesn't have to be my future. And I actually started to give myself permission to let go of all these negative influences of the past that no longer serve me, and start really working from the inside out, I guess. And it's not an easy decision, as you know.
Right.
And we're not easy. It's not always, I can talk to you about my journey a little bit before that, and we're going to get into that a little bit, but I raised my daughter by myself. I became very sick with alcoholism, even as a very accomplished person. Yeah. And I had to dig myself out of that. And I had to realize that I'm worth more than this. I don't need to stay in where I am. I have the ability to move forward. And it took me a long time to get here. So I'm very, very blessed and feel very, very lucky.
Wow. And I just listening to you, I just feel all this. We've had a lot of conversations, so I know your story. But for those listening in, I think it's such a story of hope too, Pam, because I think as we step into these new roles that we finally give ourselves permission to step into, it's hard. Like, being an entrepreneur is hard, right? A lot of people don't talk about how hard it is. But when we're in this coaching space or creating these courses to really help other people become better in the personal growth and development space, much like what you said, we also have to look inward, right? And we're looking at ourselves of who we were all those years ago. And I remember, and we'll get into this later too, but I want you to share your story and your journey about when you were kind of first writing all this stuff about what your podcast was going to be and saying, okay, this is this part of me. Should I even share all this? Right? Like,
Exactly.
do I share who I was? And the answer is absolutely, because that allows people to really connect with us and offer them hope so that they can move forward. Because when I look at you now, I mean, I see this amazing woman, this very accomplished woman who's a leader, who has an incredible, kind heart, who's so smart. You have a beautiful voice. You've got a perfect voice for your podcast.
Oh,
And
thank you.
really, and then such a compassion to really help other people move forward and show that's what's possible. So I just appreciate that you shared that, because it's hard, isn't it? Like, it's not easy to share who we were at times, you know, those very messy parts. It takes a lot to be vulnerable and to share that part.
It certainly does, in today's world especially, because so much is coming at us. And I feel like, where are the really juicy conversations just about people and life and trying to manage life on life's terms? And I have a reading for you if you would want to hear it, about where I was and where I've come from. And, I grew up in a very good neighborhood. I had a mother that stayed home with five. I was the youngest of five children. And, there was nothing in my past besides really alcoholism in the genes on both sides that came down. But my life was very, very, we prospered as young kids. We had a beach and a small lake by us we could go to, and a neighborhood that was just wonderful. And so, but there was also some really, really difficult dark nights of the soul. And I like to talk about that because I want to claim my seat here.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I love that. Claim your seat at the table where you deserve to be. 100%.
Yeah.
Please share. Please. Yes.
So recently I had a gathering of women. I work, as you said, I started a company last year. I didn't really start it because, as you said, I was doing mental health first aid. And for those of you who don't know what mental health first aid is, you can go to my website, which Terri will have in the notes. But mental health first aid, when I read about these shootings as of late, and we just heard about another one in Wisconsin, my first company is teaching mental health first aid wherever I can: schools, colleges, wellness centers, mental health centers, recovery centers, anywhere that people can learn how to recognize and respond to someone who may be experiencing a mental health challenge. Because if we can avoid any of these things, what a blessing that would be. Right. If you could catch something early. And mental health first aid has been around for many, many years, since 2008 when it came to the States from Australia. But I want to say that Dartmouth College really gave me that boost when they called me and they said, we don't have anybody up here that can teach this. And I said, I'm on board with you. And boy, I'll tell you, those students wrap their arms around this program like no tomorrow. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm teaching at Dartmouth College. Like, they know so much more than I do, right? But that's really not true when it comes to certain things, because I've lived it. So that's the first business. The second business is, as you mentioned, Successful Women and Sobriety Soar, because I feel very, very strongly that women, we have so much discussion around people and homelessness and all the bad stuff about people being on drugs and alcohol, but we don't have the conversation about what are people doing that are in recovery. What are some of the great strides that they've made in recovery? Right. And when you hear someone that's been recovering from cancer, you call them a survivor, right? You're a cancer survivor. Yeah. But when you're in recovery from alcohol or drugs, there's still a very big stigma attached to that. Like drugs. Thank goodness drugs were not a part of my story. Thank goodness, because I don't know if I would have come out of that. But, alcohol was certainly enough. And as much as I achieved and toured the world and did certain things in my life, I came and I was afflicted with this disease, and I just didn't understand it. So I think the conversation has to start getting up with the times. Like, let's talk about what people in recovery can do instead of all the things that they're not, people that are sick aren't doing, right? Yeah. Let's talk about what women can do when they're in recovery. Yeah. Build their families, get better relationships, have better, partnerships with a husband or, whomever they choose. And really start becoming part of their communities and really come from a point of purpose and intention, right?
Yeah.
So in order to really kind of build on this, I started a short origin story, and I'll share it with you if you would allow me.
Yes, please.
This is very difficult for me to share, by the way. And
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing it.
I've never really shared it publicly, so I'll share it with you and your
Thank you.
listeners. The time was December 2004. The place was a hospital intensive care unit. I was admitted to a room at about 11 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. I had severe abdominal pain, like a knife being punctured into my abdomen every 20 to 30 seconds. I had consumed 4 to 5 drinks already that morning. I came to in a stark yellow room in 4-point restraints. I was admitted to the ICU with fatty liver disease, acute pancreatitis, anorexia, depression, excessive sweating, hypertension, vomiting, and back pain. My world was whirling out of control, and I felt like an alien in my own skin. I was experiencing acute pancreatitis and withdrawal from alcohol and was not allowed anything by mouth. In medical terms, this is called NPO. My mouth was so dry, I remember someone walking by my doorway and thinking to myself, I would lick their spit off the floor right now. I was given IV hydration and placed on an Ativan drip for sedation, and I became aggressive towards staff as I was experiencing DTs or delirium tremens. My cognitive impairment was significant. I remember waking again, now in a hospital unit floor in a private room. I woke up staring at about 8 female staff members standing in front of my bed with their arms locked together. I was screaming, "Let me go home. Let me go home." I had no idea only minutes before that I had gotten up with assistance to go to the bathroom and kicked a male staff member so hard that he was injured. This was the middle of a 3-year descension into acute alcoholism.
Wow, Pam. Wow.
So this past Saturday, I received my 19-year medallion to be alcohol-free. And you know, Terri, it's just a 24-hour disease. And I have to realize how blessed I am to have women in my life who brought me to where I am today, who have suffered this dark night of the soul and who knew what I was going through.
Yeah.
And that gives me the courage to step forward and say, if you are there, you have a life to live and a whole nother aspect of yourself to meet because you are stronger than this disease.
Amen. Amen, Pam. Thank you for sharing this because, I mean, it makes me cry. And I think I shared with you before that my father is an alcoholic who recovered many years ago. But I had a very severe bulimic eating disorder. So I always say addiction is addiction is addiction. And I appreciate you sharing your heart and just think of the amount of women that you're going to touch by being vulnerable. It's hard. It's really hard to share those dark moments. And you had some very dark ones. And I love you and respect you even more because of it.
Thank you, Terri. Thank you.
Truly.
And that's really one of my driving forces when we talk about entrepreneurship, because I really want women to know that I claim my seat here, that I know what it's like to have walked that walk of bankruptcy, of divorce, of alcoholism, of, raising a child on my own.
Yeah.
Who now, by the way, is an amazing woman working for a global consulting firm in downtown Boston. And I got sober when she was 6, 5, late, she was almost 6, I think. But, we are so close because of this that I feel like God blessed us because I got sober for her. I realized that my husband, you marry an alcoholic, your life is consumed with that around you and you don't realize where you're going in life. But you know what? When I stepped off that train, which was the best decision I ever made, my life blossomed from there. And I figured out that no matter what decision I make from this day forward, it's going to be a great decision because I'm doing it sober. And I made it with the best intention of my life. And if it's not the right decision, there's always tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So it gave me a lease on life that I feel like I've been given a second chance by the grace of God, and I need to move forward with that. So with this business, I bring women, I started She Soars Fearlessly actually because of you, who I saw flourishing in the podcasting realm. And I thought, what a great mode of communication to really reach people, not so much by just social media and writing,
Right.
but by really talking to people and finding out what they're all about, and really reaching inward to find out what we're capable of when we want to take that look.
Right.
And I feel blessed. And I got into podcasting, and I took your course, thank goodness, and you walked me through every step of the way. And it was very difficult. There was very difficult times through it because I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I wasn't sure of my vision, but through talking with you and through meeting with you on a weekly basis, I found it. And that vision is to ignite the female potential, inspire women to reach their full potential, and really empower women on their journey to self-discovery, particularly women in recovery, because I think women get to a point of recovery and they may have a year or two, and then they kind of, all these old feelings are still dragging around with them.
Yeah.
And they haven't made the choice or the decision to really start thinking about, who am I now?
Right.
Why am I still living in through the rear view mirror instead of looking through the windshield of my life and realizing who I am today?
Right. I appreciate all of that. It's just so beautiful. I made a couple notes when you were speaking. Number one, how interesting. We've been trying to do this podcast for a while, and how ironic and blessed that it's December. It's your, I'm going to cry, Pam. It's your anniversary of being sober. That's not an accident. That's completely serendipitous. I say that's God, but there's a reason. Number two, thank you for trusting me to guide you forward. You did your podcast. I saw it in you. You had this passion, but I also saw this amazing voice that you have, which we're going to talk about why you have this later on. But you have this gift with your voice. You have a very soothing, calm, wonderful voice that comes across beautifully on your podcast. You also did this podcast at a time when you had some surgery. And we had to, and you persevered. You've got incredible stamina and tenacity and perseverance to keep going, even when things are hard. So that was super impressive. So thank you for sticking with me through that. And
thank you.
Yeah. And I'm so proud of you. And I love the word fearless that you have, because I was thinking as you're speaking that when you go through these hard times, like when you hit rock bottom, when you, just like you did with the alcohol, I've hit rock bottom in my own way as well. There's nowhere to go but up. Exactly. And so we have this different sense of fearlessness. We're not afraid as much because we've already been at the bottom. We know how we can rise up and step forward and soar, right? So fearless and to soar fearlessly just is such an awesome podcast and use of words for you too. And it's such a gift to women. I love that. So thank you. I'm just excited. I really am. And I'm excited to share with women today who you are and what you do, and to see you thrive now and to see you soar. And the thing too that I love, Pam, about these podcasts, just much like you, we get to know each other. We get to dive deep and share our stories, share who we are.
Yeah.
And the effects of podcasting are actually great. They don't have the same negative effects that listening to social media does, because our brains are actually relaxed when we're listening. We're connecting with people. We're processing it completely different. It's really powerful to make very deep connections. So anyway, all that to say, I'm just really proud of you. But share a little bit about, kind of what you do now as you were going along. You found this discovery, kind of starting this business, the podcast, similar to my journey. Podcasting is what launched me forward. It really gave me clarity to where I wanted to go and how I wanted to help women. Very similar.
Absolutely.
So share a little bit about what that is, what you do now, and what you love about it. And just dive into that a little bit.
You know what I love about it, Terri? I love the fact that I can wake up in the morning and feel like my day is going to be great today. It's going to be great today. Even when I don't feel great, I know now because you and I have spent the time in the last 5 years or 6 years. This has been brewing in me for a long time. So the cultivation of this has come to fruition just last year. But at the same time, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I wanted to do or how I wanted to do it. And so, I decided through our teachings and what we've learned is that our circle of influence is so important for us because we want to be around people that challenge us, not that being around friends that that don't necessarily challenge us is all good, but if you want to grow something in your life, you've got to be around people that are going to push you harder. And you and I have found that with Tony Robbins and Ed Milet and Brendan Bouchard and some of those masters at this who are not only masters, they're wealthy masters, and they've done this for a living for some time now. I mean, years and decades. But Dean Graziosi. But by learning from them and, actually investing in some of their courses, I've learned that I too have the abilities and I have the wherewithal to take one small step at a time. Yeah. And I immersed myself in 2024 into developing my own website, which I had to completely develop from the ground up and didn't know anything about how to do that. I, started coursework with Swiss and started developing my podcast with you. And then I developed Swiss, which was, I trying to reach out to women and do courses on boundaries and resilience and where to go from here. And a one-on-one client, I have one-on-one clients that I work with. And the beauty of this is that I have to grow in order for me to teach.
Right.
So to me, it's like a win-win situation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't have to go into a job that I hate and wonder, what am I doing here? Or why can't I do it this way? Or spending, 40 hours a week or plus working for somebody else on somebody else's vision.
Right.
And by the grace of God, I got married 4 years ago, and my husband gave me a clean ticket to say, honey, if you want to do this, go for it. And boy, did I didn't waste a moment. I really tried to, thank God for him and thank God for giving me the opportunity, because I would have never been able to do this on my own.
I didn't realize you just got remarried 4 years ago. I didn't know that. Wow, that's awesome.
2020 with Mark.
Wow.
Yeah, right in the middle of COVID. We had hundreds of people coming, and we had to shut it down. So we had a wedding of 10 people. But all was very good. It was by the water where I love, and it was just great. But you know what, Terri, when we start realizing what we want and start thinking about what we want instead of what we don't have, our lives begin to change.
100%. And just this past week, I did a vision, like planning for 2025 class. And as you're speaking, it made me think about your year. I always say, look back at how far you've come. Look what you accomplished last year. It's incredible. So for any woman out there thinking, she's too old, it's too late, you don't know how to start over, just listen to what you just did, right? You took a course, you launched a podcast, you launched your website, you created your business, you created a course, you do one-on-one coaching. Wow, amazing. And you're doing in-person little mini,
coaching sessions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, this is the time where I need to step back, re-strategize, and talk about and really think about, okay, I wanted to immerse myself. Tony Robbins often talks about immersion. And I thought to myself, if I don't immerse myself, I'm going to find myself stepping away from it, because it can be very fearful and very overwhelming as an entrepreneur. And, just lonely and all of those things that you and I talk about. So I had to really just immerse myself. And now that I've gotten my feet wet, so to speak, barely, I feel like I can now start building on this, and really helping women. So, I'm looking forward to 2025, because I really feel like I've done the work a little bit, and I can continue to really now enhance what I'd like to do.
That's awesome. And I think just one more thing, just to finalize a little bit about the podcasting, as you were speaking, the other thing that I thought about is, for any woman that thinks that, she's too afraid to start, she has to have it all figured out. Both you and I started kind of messy. We just kind of dove in, came up with our podcast title, which is always, I think, the hardest part. But then you figure it out along the way, and it almost gives you more clarity as you're moving right? Like
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have to
Like,
have it all figured out when you start, but as you go, you get clearer and clearer to who you're trying to help and what you want to say, right? And finding your voice in that moment. Would you agree?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I also started, so I had to look at my two businesses. Not only did I start a business, I started, I had to work with two.
Right.
So I thought, okay, well, maybe you're taking on a little too much here, Pam. But it was great because what I've done is I've built my mental health first aid team. I've taken on two more instructors. That was the other thing I did this year.
Wow.
And so I've had to keep them involved and get them certified in mental health first aid instruction, which is a full week of instruction. And then now we're really going to start building that business and start really getting out there and teaching this course. So now, all the pieces can be in place. I can start putting those puzzle pieces together because now I know what the puzzle framework looks like, right?
Ah, yeah. Oh, that's
So
beautiful.
anybody, as you said, Terri, and you're so good at this, you having a gift of really making people start believing in themselves. And
Mm.
when I met you in California, I took that trip out there. I didn't know what I was in for. I wanted to know that I spent thousands of dollars on this particular course to get out there and meet this person who I wanted to follow and learn from. And I still do learn from her today. And I met you then, and I met your husband then. And then I knew I was around real people with real visions and and real desires to really better not only their own lives but their communities and their world. So that really kind of solidified things for me.
And I forgot to mention that we've actually met in person, which was amazing. And you think about that bond that was created. I'm close to a lot of those people that were there in that room that day.
Really?
And, yeah. And so I forgot about that we have actually met in person.
Yeah.
I forgot. I apologize for not mentioning that.
No,
Silly.
that's great.
But as you're also speaking, like I was just thinking about these different things that you have done some things a little bit different. Like I'm listening to you, Pam, and I'm like, wow, all that you've done, I'm mind blown. It's easy when we're going through, we don't think about all these things that we're doing, but when we look back, as you're sharing what 2024 was, it's incredible. Not to mention that you went to Ireland, you had surgery, and then you did all this other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tie Ireland into this later when we talk about,
But quickly, you've done some things differently. You actually hired a PA. Like you have somebody that kind of helps you, which has been really, really helpful. Like for anybody out there thinking this is so hard, you've done that, which has been really, really helpful for you in your business, hasn't it? It's kind of taken away some of that pressure, things that you don't like doing, but just that's an option for people if they're afraid of technology or if they just feel overwhelmed because you're navigating both these businesses. So for you to hire a PA, that has been a huge growth step for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I had to realize that I'm only one person and I'm not doing all this very effectively because I was trying to learn so much in a very short amount of time. And I did put a lot of pressure on myself, but I realized that people are out there that can help you and know things. And why try to recreate the wheel and spend hours on something that's going to take somebody else 10 minutes to do and do it better than what I can do?
Yeah.
And so I hired a virtual assistant from the Philippines who I adore. And Terri, when I look back on this year, I thought, I would never know I could do this ever.
Yeah.
And I just kept stepping forward because I'm like, well, I stepped in the mud there. I'm going to keep going. I've stepped in the mud there. I'm going to keep going, and you feel like, okay, you step into that fear so much that it doesn't become fearful anymore. And that's the blessing of it. That's really the blessing of it,
Yeah.
There's still fear there, but it's not so much fear as it is, all right, how do I wrap my arms around this?
Right.
And
I would agree. I think it's probably healthy fear in some way. It's always going to be present, but we don't allow it to keep us stuck,
Exactly.
And anytime I think we're leveling up and stepping forward and trying these new things or stepping forward and soaring, right?
Yeah.
We're going to experience that new level of fear because we're stepping into territory we haven't been before. But we don't allow it to stop us. It doesn't paralyze us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And through trainings I've realized that I've taken down my original house. And I put it in an analogy that I've taken and torn down my original house, which is happening all over the lake, by the way. And you can't touch a house, even though it's 900 square feet for under $1 million plus
Wow.
around here. So People come in, they take down the house no matter what was there, and you start taking all of those things like your bankruptcy, your alcoholism and your treatment and your divorce and your raising a child on your own and your blah, 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 blah. And I really put those bricks into my foundation and started building that foundation with that, because that's going to be a strong foundation. And I've learned that that's what I'm going to build my foundation on, not some, not looking great or making pretend that I'm some great. So I don't even want that anymore. I don't want that recognition. I just want to build that foundation of all those rough times that I put in to get through it and realize that, you know what, that is what is going to build this business.
Wow.
Not me trying to get out on these radio shows and that's all great, but it's not what it's really built from. It's built from those hard times where I barely could get out of bed,
That is just such a beautiful analogy. And it just makes me realize that, we all were so afraid it's hard to be vulnerable, like we were talking about, but our mess becomes, like we've heard Dean say, becomes our message. But the way you've just put it, it's our foundation.
Absolutely.
And we have nowhere to go but up from there, like what we were talking about. So you lay that foundation, all those messy, broken parts. And I think at some point they become, like you said, a puzzle. We put them all back together and they become that solid foundation that we rise up from. And that then we can step forward and soar and help others.
Yes.
I love that. We get to rebuild the house. And instead of like being afraid of it and throwing it away, no, use it. Use it to lay the foundation for who you are now.
Absolutely, because those are the juice of the life. That's the juice of life where people we've had to step forward and say, no matter what, I'm going to take that little step forward. And then it's like when I signed up for my master's at 57 years old, I thought, what are you doing? But it was a bucket list. I promised myself in life that I would get a master. I don't know what it was, but I think I was tired of the pay scale of a bachelor's. And I decided the only way I'm going to move forward is that piece of paper, which is really a sad commentary in some ways. But, when I signed the dotted line for financial aid and at the bank, I thought, there's no turning back now, Pam. You've got to do this. And so, and building on that, which I really had some really tough moments getting through a master's degree at Boston University, where I had to call the actual dean of the program to say, I don't think I'm going to make it. And he turned around, he said, Pam, I'm talking to you from my kitchen. And he said, if I had to make a bet today, he said, I would bet on you.
Wow, Pam, that's amazing.
And I thought, what? And so that really gave me and he gave me some tips about what to do. And I thought, wow, okay. So it made me regroup and say, okay, Pam, you know nothing about this topic, but the problem is if you failed a course in this particular master's, you would have to start all over and get refinancial aid. I mean, I would have wasted 30 to 40 grand on this. So I knew, and sometimes building on that, I realized that there's nothing harder than saying, okay, you've got to do this. And I knew that I would meet, that you're going to meet that expectation. You don't know it, but you do,
Yeah.
And I don't want to finish this conversation, Terri, without a really big plug for faith. What I've learned is that I've got to trust not only in some real close friends, but really understand that I have a purpose in this life, as you do, and my purpose wasn't to stay an alcoholic. My purpose wasn't to achieve all these wonderful things and keep achieving, because our purpose is to serve, is to help, and to be part of this life in a communal way.
Absolutely.
And when I sit back and look, I think, wow, all the God shots I've had in my life are just absolutely unbelievable. Wow. And we'll finish this podcast with that when we get there.
Yeah, and we got one today. I mean, even the fact, like you said, that we're here in December, your month of being sober, which is just amazing. And I just thank you so much for sharing all that, because it's just, I'm learning so much more about you. I have so much respect for you, Pam. It's just incredible. You are such an achiever and leader, and just have such a humble heart too. What do you think, maybe you've already answered this a little bit, just two questions. Number one, what do you think's been the hardest thing as you've stepped forward into this entrepreneurial journey? And what has surprised you? Maybe we've already answered some of those, but I don't know about the surprise part.
the hardest thing for me has been the technical aspects and really getting to a point of letting it not stop me of this because I didn't grow up with it like our kids are growing up with it today. And the other hard part is just the stepping off of the normal process of life, getting a job and realizing that my job is me. My job is building my life to the best of my ability to become a person of impact, a person of, service, and a person that, I think that is doing the next right thing in God's eyes, because I want to fulfill Oprah talks about this. She says, the best thing you can do is when someone asks you, who are you? If someone said to you, Terri, who are you?
Yeah.
What would you answer?
Who am I now? I would say I am a woman of God. I've been married for 35 years. I'm a mom, and I'm a woman who wants to make a difference in the world and help others step forward. Excellent. I don't know.
Excellent.
Is that good?
Excellent.
Had to think, how's that for off-the-cuff response?
yeah, that's perfect. And it's exactly what I was going to say. It basically, Oprah has this saying, she said, it took her a long time. And as you know, Oprah, when you look at some of these people's lives, they didn't just get to be famous. She came from, sexual abuse, poverty.
Yeah.
You go through her life and you realize that this woman, we have teachers. Success leaves clues, as what we were taught, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she has this saying that, and I'm, I like Oprah. I have difference of opinions with her, but she is an absolute inspiration to so many. But she said, today I'm a child of God, and because I am a child of God, all that is possible for me.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
And her teacher was Maya Angelou, and one of her teachers. I mean, she is so profound in ways now because she's learned so much about her life and being able to help people. But anyway, that's what I would say. I'm now a full whole. I'm whole. One of the things in addiction is we never feel whole. And when I was flown from the hospital to a treatment center because my parents didn't want me to go back home because I'd been to 2 other treatment centers, I was flown directly from the hospital to Maryland. And I was very blessed to be part of a community called Father Martin's Ashley. And I was just blessed in that I realized when they got there, they said, you are a whole person. We want to, meaning that if you need to go get your hair done, you want to go get your nails done, if you want to learn how to do yoga. I mean, so what they taught you wasn't all about addiction and, blah, blah, blah. It was about you are a person. You're a whole person. And so their logo is the tree of life. It's being that whole person that you are, not just that addicted personality person. You're much more than that. And
that's not the addiction is not who you are. Yeah. It makes me think of what I say at the end of my podcast. You are seen, you are heard, you are loved, you are valued, and you belong.
Absolutely.
So probably why that treatment center worked is that they saw you and they treated you as a human, not just the addiction. Right?
Father Martin was a priest and who had a severe alcohol disorder and built this beautiful treatment center on Chesapeake Bay. We were on the water, and it's just the most serene place I ever could have been. And I decided at that moment that I was done. The surrender flag went up, and I knew right then that life's going to take on another turn. I don't know what it's going to be, but what a blessing. What a blessing.
And think about that, what that one decision did for you. One decision. It changed the course of your life. It changed the course of your daughter's life. And now you're changing the course of other women's lives who are able to learn from you. Pretty powerful.
I hope so.
Makes me think of, doesn't Ed Milet say the power of one?
Yes.
Makes me think about that, right? The power of one. Yeah. Beautiful.
And just being able to be purposeful and have intention in my life to help other women to move forward in their lives was huge.
Yeah. So What advice would you give to a midlife woman today who wants to start a business? What would you tell her? What would you encourage her with, if she wanted to start a business, be a coach, whatever? What would you say?
I would say make the decision and go all in, but realize it's going to be messy.
Yeah.
And the messiness is the beauty of it. And it's all right. It's all right.
I love that.
And take that journey to know who you are and to be passionate about your life, because we only get one.
Amen to that. And how about to start a podcast? What would you tell the woman who wants to start a podcast, who's been wondering, should I do a podcast? Am I qualified? Am I ready? Can I do it? Can I do the technology part? What would you say?
If you don't try it, you won't know.
Yeah.
Not everything is for us. But as Tony Robbins says, you gotta step forward and try something. And if it's not for you, go to the next thing.
Yeah.
And then go to the next thing until you find what is you, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
Yep.
We don't pick things, exactly right every time.
Right. And I think what happens too is we get tripped up and we don't move forward because we think we have to have it all figured out now. But what people don't realize is the journey is just starting right where you are and moving forward one step at a time. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely. So I've sat up here and, I've sat in my office and thought, all right, Pam, what are you really doing? What are you really doing? And what is your purpose? And I don't spend enough time, I think, on that inner dialogue as much as I would like, because we're so busy doing that. I'm going to start scheduling it in my day where I take half an hour, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour a day, just to say, okay, rituals are so, so important. And I want to stress this. Just learn the basics of anything, because the basics are what launch us forward. When you hear about Wayne Gretzky and you hear about Kobe Bryant, you hear about all these famous, athletes, that behind the scenes, Michael Phelps, he went to 2 practices a day, but he actually did 3 practices a day. And they told him that he would never be able to survive that. And look what he accomplished in 1/100th of a second.
Yeah. 1/100th of a second. Beautiful.
Learning the basics got him through to be an absolute a goat. He's just he's just an amazing man. And I think that's how we have to keep it simple and just know the basics and keep going over the basics.
Yeah. And don't make it complicated. Just keep it simple. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because the basics are what make us good. You just got to keep practicing and don't ever think I'm good enough not to practice.
I love that. I love that. This has been such a fun interview. I mean, I think I know you, but I've learned so many wonderful things about you from doing this. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Likewise.
Well, and a couple more questions for you, but tell us a fun fact about you, something that we don't know that you'd like to share with my audience.
Okay. A fun fact is I am consistently late. People in my family joke that the Belangers, it's Belanger time. That's my maiden name. Belanger time. And then there's Pam time. Right. So everybody tells me to come half an hour late so that I'll get there at least, on time, which is just a joke with all my friends and my family. But anyway, and my family's consistently late. But one time in the middle of my break at college, when I was going to my bachelor's degree right after school, I came home for a vacation, and my girlfriend wanted to go to the show that was at the middle school. And I thought, oh God, I don't want to go to the show, blah, blah, blah. And so we get there. Of course, we're late because Pam didn't make the decision until late. We go in there. The whole bleachers are packed to the max. So we end up against the back wall of this auditorium. And this show came on, and it was called Up With People. And I'm thinking, who is this group? And, whatever. It was just not a good attitude. And so I'm against the cement wall, and they do this audience participation thing where they come up and they pull people out of the audience. This kid came up. He pulled me out of the audience I was at the top of the bleachers. Now, talk about a God shot. So he pulled me down, and I thought, what is happening right now? And he pulls me down, and we're out there doing this this clapping thing, this group called Up With People, and I'm thinking, who is this? And then this boy reaches over, he looks over at me, goes, "You should audition." I said, "What?" And so I loved the show so much. It was a 2-hour musical show to bring people together through music around the world. And I toured with this group for a year. We went all over the world. We did a 2-hour show. Our basic show was Ireland. And I had not been back to Ireland since I was 21 years old, where I spent my birthday, until this past year. And I went with my cast, 650 of us, all went to Limerick.
Wow, 650?
It was a reunion for all of Up With People. Wow. And it's the best year I've ever had in my life, hands down. I toured. I stayed in 100 host families. We toured in buses all around the world. And we did this 2-hour show in front of presidents, in front of ambassadors, in front of nursing home residents, in front of deaf students. I can't even tell you the depth of which we actually performed this in mental institutions. We went all over the world in every capacity. We performed before 25,000 people at the Silverdome in Detroit, Michigan for GM.
Wow.
And I got back to do PR. I was chosen to do public relations in Dublin, Ireland. So they sent me ahead, which they do for every cast. They send students ahead to set up the city, if you will. And so I stayed with the host family for over 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. And I got back to see them this past August, met their children who were 9 months, 1.5, and like 3 at the time. They're now 40, 42, and 45, or something like that.
Wow.
And it was just a beautiful reunion. I have kept in touch, off and on through the years, but we've been able to stay in touch, and it was just a God shot, Terri. And so, that's a fun fact. I love to sing. I'm a singer. I'd love to get back to that. I keep talking about getting back to it, and one of my goals this year is to pick up that guitar and get back to it. So
wow. And I say that's why you have such a beautiful voice too, because you are a singer, so you have this wonderful melodic voice that comes across on your podcast. Yeah, it really does.
I don't do that, but yeah, thank you.
It does. But I remember Up With People. I remember they were here in California. I remember seeing them and thinking, and that's probably I would love to have done something like that. So I think that's super cool. I just think that's a wonderful, fun fact.
Well, you didn't have to be a singer, and that was the beauty of it. We had people playing instruments. We had people that were just in the business office. We had people, that did different things throughout the year. But just to stay in 100 host families from people all around the world and learn about life on life's terms was just an amazing thing.
What a wonderful experience.
Unfortunately, Up With People closed its doors this past year. It just can't compete, I think, with all the media and, the internet stuff. But I have a wonderful cast, 60 plus people that keep in touch out of 120 from people all over the world. And I'm very blessed. Feel very, very, very blessed to have that family.
What a wonderful opportunity that was. Is there anything else that I've missed that you'd like to share?
Ooh, at this point in time, I just want to share that our lives are what we make it. And it's not about what's happening on the outside that has much to do with the quality of our lives. It's what happens on the inside. And I'm so blessed and feel so grateful for people like you and for women that have been so close to me, that have helped me move forward. And, I just pray that I'm able to do that with others and really help build community around women really seeking their purpose. And
you already are. You are. And you're leading by example. You're definitely already doing that. I will put all that here in the show notes where they can connect with you, with your website, with Satori Communications and your podcast, so that they can listen into that. Before we started recording, I was asking you, is there anything you'd like to offer the listeners to get to know you even a little bit more?
Yes, I'd love to offer 30 minutes of one-on-one time. If anybody resonates with what we've been talking about today, please reach out for me at Pamela at satoricomgroup.com, which will be in the show notes. Satori meaning enlightenment. So I wanted to start that business and be in the mission of what we're trying to do. But yeah, I would say email probably the best.
Okay, perfect. And also you had mentioned something about January being, is it dry January?
It is. And if anybody's who is sober curious or just wanting to talk about, where they might be at with alcohol or other substances, please feel free to reach out to me. If I'm nothing, I'm a resource to tie you into something else, or if you were looking for help, or if you're looking to just talk to someone and you're curious about alcohol or other substances, please reach out, or just recovery from, as we know, Terri, whatever, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and right now I'm seeing there's a lot of hurting people, and addiction, whatever that is huge right now in so many different aspects. And so you're a great resource to guide women forward with that.
Well, it's not even so much addiction, but mental health. I mean, look at what happened. Yeah. Look at what's happening this week. Yeah. I mean, at a Catholic school in Madison, Wisconsin. I mean, what's happening to our kids? What's happening is this is the residual of, severe drug addiction, in our parents who can no longer, who are ineffective in parenting, and our kids with, all this media coming at them and very little structure of how to even operate, and it's full of anxiety, depression, all sorts of things. And, we really have to help each other in this moment, because it is going to get better, but we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, that's probably a whole other topic, but you're right. I mean, people really need help. I actually heard, maybe it was Mel Robbins said something really interesting, that the heightened stress that we have is really post-COVID, that we haven't really settled in. There's been so much trauma stirred up from COVID, just that, and everybody feeling unsettled, not knowing what's happening, the economy, the mental health, has just, all that has just kind of continued. We haven't settled down yet. And we're still in a heightened state of anxiety, even with the economy and the election, wherever you are.
Yeah, and I would put that in perspective. I think COVID has, COVID takes on way too much of people's minds that is no longer here. And I feel like COVID was one piece, but certainly our economy, all this fentanyl and all this stuff coming over the border. Yeah. I lost a nephew 3-4 years ago. He was just experimenting, and he didn't realize, of course, that there was fentanyl in whatever he was doing. And he was 20, and he overdosed upstairs in my sister's house. And by accident. And I cannot. I have a hard time wrapping my arms around it.
Yeah, I heard that too, that statistic that people just have no idea what fentanyl has done to our society. It's really bad. And
when it's coming over in pounds and kilos and tons, that's a whole nother story. But it's taking our kids. It's raping our country of everything that we were founded on, and we've got to get better at it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you just for your friendship. I'm so grateful we've connected, that we've met, that we're on this journey together, that we are stepping forward and soaring. Everybody, please listen to Pam's podcast. It's amazing. Her voice is beautiful. She has great guests and wonderful content. Yeah, we are just helping each other and helping others step forward and soar. So Merry Christmas.
Amen. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I look forward to 2025 too, for what's ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Terri.
Thank you. Everybody, please follow her, and where you can connect with her will be in the show notes. So thank you again. Merry Christmas, everyone. Have a great day. Well, thank you so much for being here and listening in. I hope you have some key takeaways that you can apply to your own life. Pam has a phenomenal story. And if you're interested in launching your podcast, stay tuned. I'll be launching my course again in the new year. Love to teach you, guide you, and help you believe that it's never too late to step forward. Know that you are seen, you are heard, you are loved, you are valued, and you belong. God bless and have an amazing day.